youth-centric vision. It's focusing on the youth. It's giving powers to the youth to take lead in the development of this nation. Why is that so? It's so because the youth are in majority in Malawi. So we all know that about the statistics of 2018 from the Malawi housing census shows that 51% of the youth of the population in Malawi are the youth who are under 18, just under 18. They are 51% of the population, which means we are a lot. So we need to take advantage of us as the youth, being energetic as we are, to implement this vision. So we are the opportunity, and this vision is also our opportunity. So that's the outline of my presentation. A brief overview of Malawi 2063, the contents of the Malawi, I will just call it MIP1, then that's the implementation framework of Malawi 2063. Then the focus areas and prioritized interventions of the pillars and enablers. This is section is quite a lot. I will try to cut it in short, because it presents interventions under each of the pillars and enablers of the vision. And flagship project, information to stakeholders on the expected outcomes and roles expected of them under each of the interventions. Financing sources, where are we going to get the finances under each of the interventions presented for pillars and enablers. Framework for systematic M&E so that we can monitor and evaluate whatever we are implementing in the programs and projects. And also, it is aligned to the MIP1. Alignment of the MIP1 is also aligned to the Sustainable Development Goals and the Africa Union Agenda 2060. So, it has a number of focus areas, one of which is agriculture diversification. In agriculture diversification, just take note that those interventions that we have highlighted there, we have only picked the interventions that are running from 2021 to 2023, just for this short term, quickly, because I think the budget for this year and last year, that's where we're focusing on. So we just decided to focus on those interventions, but when you go into the MIP1, you find that there are interventions running up to 2030. So in these interventions, we also find that some presented that are running up to 2030. So we have another focus area, irrigation development, which is to map and develop all irrigation potential sites and their respective crop officials integration. We have another focus area which is talking of anchor farms. Expand certification of standards, like MPS and other standards. Map and profile international opportunities for prioritizing investments in the strategic sectors as defined by existing national export strategy. Align tax tariff and excesses to study and commence best practices. Establish joint centers. Establish one-stop business information and service provision centers in district councils across the country to cater for SMEs, cooperatives, and industries. Then there's another focus area which is talking about creation of special economic zones and export processing zones, where we are to establish a national single window for trade. And there's another focus area, research, science, and science, technology, and innovation, which has interventions like construct and rehabilitate mineral testing laboratories, develop contractor and licensing guidelines to facilitate commercialization of IPRs, establish and capacitate functional companies and intellectual property office to promote and enforce intellectual rights. Then we have the third pillar, which is urbanization. The aim of the urbanization is to have world-class urban centers and tourism hubs across the country with requisite modern socio-economic amenities. So the focus areas are to develop secondary cities. We want to have 4 cities in Malawi. So we want to further develop secondary cities. It's starting with the development of the master plans, where our city councils are developing the master plans for the development of the secondary cities. These secondary cities, we are especially targeting the areas where there is potential, like the lecture areas, like Salima. We have Salima around Chibuga area, we have Liwonde, we have Sanje, Chikwao, Bambula is in Sanje. Bambula, Sanje. So we have Mangoji, Machinga, I think Kalonga is also one of it. So Katape, I think, is also one of it. So there are a number of districts targeted, about 8 of them for secondary cities. So infrastructure development planning and investment in the cities and towns to develop and update master plans for the existing cities. Existing cities also need to update the master plans that are already there. Those that don't have, they have to develop. Digitize land records, systems and processes. Develop a GPS trackable digital database for all real estates and properties in the towns and cities. Modernize the geodetic network. Create municipal police for each of the major towns and cities. Set up and operationalize municipal courts to try by-law offenders. Then we have sustainable municipal self-financing mechanisms. Implement innovation, cost-effective valuation and bidding of all city properties in order to significantly spread the property tax burden and improve revenue. Transfer all public lands in cities and town jurisdiction to city councils, to town and city councils, to comply with the land laws and to expand the revenue base for councils through ground rent. To establish, the focus area on tourism development is we have interventions like establish a system that provides preferential treatment for domestic tourists. Review tourist visa requirements to attract tourism and tourists. Diversify big under the same. We have those interventions. Diversify big direct airlines from the region overseas by reviewing airlines landing fees and airspace agreements. Provide necessary services in tourist attraction sites. Those are the services. Establish online hubs for promotion of creative arts at local and international markets. Establish capacity building program for creative arts at national and decentralized levels, local governments. So the enablers, there are 7 of them, one of which is mindset change, whose aim is to have a unified, patriotic and proud people that believe in their own abilities and are active participants in building the nation towards its development goals. So there are about 5, if not 6, focus areas. Visionary and transformative leadership, that's what we want to focus on there. So we have to conduct civic education on inclusivity and ownership of national transformation agenda of Malawi 2063. Establish and sustain local hubs and or platforms. Using the Pabaro, there's a Pabaro platform, I think, which the Ministry of Civic Unity has also established as a discussion forum for the communities to discuss public issues at each ATC level. And we have another focus area, which is patriotism, to institute a cultural week as a hub for cultural marketing, tourism, and national unity. Openness and transparency, we just quickly look at the interventions. Then another focus area is the rule of law. Then we have the fourth focus area, which is sustainable and long-term development orientation. We have the sound financial and economic management around the effective governance, and we have another one, human rights and cultural diversity, which is social cohesion, and we have sustainable peace and security. So those are the focus areas around the effective governance systems and institutions. So we have enhanced public sector performance, where we have also a number of focus areas, one of which is public sector reforms and the public service delivery. And digital economy promotion, medium, small scale enterprises development, anchor farms development, education. We are going to another enabler number 5, which is the human capital development enabler. This one also have about 8 focus areas. We have education and skills development as one focus area. We have science, technology and innovation as another. We have healthy and nutrition as another focus area. Managing population growth, water, sanitation and hygiene, sports and creative arts, gender equality and equity, and social welfare. Those are the focus areas. We have enabler number 6, which is economic infrastructure. The focus areas are energy generation and supply, transport development, ICT development. Those are the key 3 focus areas in the energy infrastructure development, So last one is the environmental sustainability enabler, which has focus areas like ecosystem conservation and environmental management, waste management and green economy, climate change management, environmental and climate change financing, as well as natural disaster and climate and visitors preparedness. So those are the potential financing sources of the MIP1. Financing those interventions that are shared. So we have the public-private partnerships by government institutions working with the private sector. The blended financing may take any combination of financing sources. We have the governmental partners, which includes non-governmental organizations. We have government of Malawi. This is funding through domestic revenues by the government itself. Corporate social responsibility investment. This investment and intervention by private sector institutions within their catchment areas, which may be the entire country. They can just do any social responsibility, whether constructing a school block, a health facility, or maybe providing scholarships to the maybe hardworking students or needy students. So there are so many social responsibilities that the private sector can come in and help in the implementation of this vision. Venture capital, large and long-term investments by companies, individuals into startups with great potential for growth. Private sector, this is where private sector invests in development projects or interventions, not social responsibility. Contracting, where government of Malawi subcontracts the execution of the development intervention or project to another institution while maintaining overall oversight. Collateralism, where the government of Malawi obtains financing or support in implementation of an intervention by putting an offer in its resources, which may be non-liquid. Then grants, these are grants from development partners. Loans, these include concession loans, bonds, international bonds, and diaspora bonds. Coordination mechanism for the implementation for the MIP1. Yeah, we are working on it. So then, for us to every operationalize the MIP1, when I say for us, not for me or not for NPC, but for us as Malawians, National Planning Commission coordinated the development of the establishment of the pillar coordination groups and enabler coordination groups to replace the sector working groups. I am sure some of us know the sector working groups. So the pillar coordination groups and enabler coordination groups, these are those pillars and those enablers I've highlighted. So we are forming coordination groups around those. So each of the pillars represent a coordination group. Each of the enablers represents a coordination group. We will coordinate effective pillar and enabler-wide implementation of Malawi 2063 by focusing on pillar and enabler priorities. They will promote the continuity of good development programs across years. They will facilitate channeling of resources towards a common planning and management framework centered on the country's priorities and the vision. They will ensure that government coordinates implementation of activities in a pillar or enabler by assuming leadership in the sustainable socio-economic transformation and development of the country. So the leader come up with a plan. Nothing can happen. So we need to implement it. Thank you for your attention. But if you want to learn more about the Malawi 2063 and the MIP1, go to NPC website. There are those documents where you can go and read properly each of the intervention, understand them, and also ask questions to NPC if you have any.
Quickly, before we begin, I'm sure apart from just hearing the President talk about our vision for 2063, we've had an opportunity to go through it through the presentation. So may I call upon a few individuals who've got comments on the presentation before we quickly move on to the next presentation? All right.
What type of mindset change programs have you put in place for the ones who are governing or regulating that system for the youth?
Yeah, kind of commercialization. You said that there's promotion of crops which are for wheat, milk, and everything. But now know those crops only help these people. There's an issue with license, yeah?
Can you speak louder so that I'm missing out on most of what you said?
Okay, I'm saying that on point number 1 on agricultural commercialization, there's an issue of promoting production of crops like hemp, wheat, rice, and everything. But in agriculture, the only activity which it gets more funding is AIP. AIP subsidies for the fertilizers and maize, plus livestock, which is goats, lower share farms. So how does AIP fit into that when it's not promoting? It's not actually commercialization, it's focusing mainly on the production of food. And on the same, on AIP, fertilizer now is getting to be more expensive. For example, now in that is a 55,000 budget, some is like 49,000 budget. So with how the fertilizer rates are going, and with how our soil is right now, for example, most of the soils cannot already do well with fertilizer application alone. We also need to do organic farming, when it adds manure. So where does all this fit into the AIP agenda on promoting food? Basically, on the area where I'm funding is food and agriculture, there's nothing like that except for the hemp one. Shouldn't AIP and other crops as well, or shouldn't it be more diversified for it to actually reach that point whereby commercialization of those crops is actually done? Or are we still going to be doing things whereby farmers seem to be giving everything on subsidy when actually business need to invest, need to actually put more money into it for you to actually get something from it? Because from my experience, you can't give someone fish and say that person will fish. You actually do business on the fish. Instead, you teach the person how to fish.
Is that or should I start responding?
Yeah, you can respond to that. There are other comments that come throughout.
Okay. Now, the first one on Malawi 2063, the youth,
Maybe try to
centric.
Yeah.
What is the government doing in achieving the landscape of the youth? You mean in the implementation of Malawi 2063? Not so. So I think they are, with the coming of Malawi 2063 and the MIP 1, almost all MDAs have been told to align their plans to Malawi 2063. That's the first thing. They have aligned their plans to the Malawi 2063. And they are all aware that youth are at the center of the implementation, which means in their targeting, they need to make sure that the youth are part and parcel of the implementation of the interventions that are there. However, maybe the missing link is on how are we going to ensure that the youth are really being involved. That's where now NPC is coming in to coordinate this through the development of the youth engagement strategy. So we want to ensure that youth are being involved in each of these interventions being implemented by all these sectors. So we are trying to come up with a youth engagement strategy for the youth to be involved in the implementation of the Malawi 2063. But there are a number of things that have already started happening, maybe within the MTS. For example, the Minister of Youth is coming up with a National Youth Service. There are a lot of interventions there around that. And the Minister of Trade, alongside the Minister of Agriculture, I think they are also promoting the youth working in cooperatives, in groups, so that they can be supported. So you have to be in the groups, form the cooperatives, the associations, so that you can easily be targeted, because the focus is on you as youth. So you need to act, as we already said, that you need to act, you need to come out, as the other lady said, and you work towards the national development. Not sit at home expecting someone to come and give you something without you acting on something. So we are counting on you as youth to be active implementers, active participants in the implementation of the Malawi 2063. Much as it is being implemented by these sectors, but these sectors work with you as youth. They work with the community. And this time around, we are telling them that they ensure that their focus is on the youth. I don't know if that one has been answered.
My question was a bit hijacked. My question was, the enabler number 1 is mindset change.
Yes.
And the vision is century for the youth. What programs are there for the ones who are leading us government, it's not actually run by the youth. What programs are there for those people to actually understand where we are as the youth and the enable environment for us to participate? That's what I'm asking.
Can you repeat the environment? Maybe I'm missing out.
This is a process. It will take 26 years, is it, to come into manifestation. So what I've started is, the government has developed the presentation that she's about to do on youth engagement strategy, which is highlighting the areas that all the implementers in Malawi, whatever, whichever department it will be, they will be using as a guideline in development projects. Number one. Number two, the Ministry of Youth is about to roll out National Youth Service, and in the National Youth Service, there's a component of mindset change, and this one is focusing on young. I should say children, because it will start from the age of 6. The in-school young people, in-school youth. So these ones will have them. What do we call it? Curriculum. We're developing a curriculum where we are review of the curriculum where we are trying to impart patriotism on.
Sort of the vision to include mindset change is one step of providing an environment where the mindset has to be changed, whether man is or whoever is there. So another thing that is also happening, there are a number of proposals. I remember there is also a certain consulting firm which has provided the concept note to National Planning Commission. They have their concept note of mindset change, particularly around the youth, but they are focusing on youth in entrepreneurship. So there's also another mindset change proposal from World Vision Malawi, but theirs is also looking at another perspective. They are focusing on coming up with a movement where we will come up with champions, empowering, capacitating the leadership, the religious leaders to instill mindset change through the interventions, the capacity building, awareness campaigns to all the sectors of the country, including the youth, the communities. And there's also NICE. NICE is also coming in with a concept. So looking at the concepts that were coming in to NPC around mindset change, all these I've mentioned, they are not government, but there are some NGOs. NICE is kind of an independent government institution, the civil society. It's a civil society. But they are now, including the Ministry of National Unity, they are coming up with project proposals on how they can implement the mindset change and apply. So we are coordinating that to bring up, to come up with one major program around mindset change intervention. So the moment we are coordinating, we are likely also to make sure that the youth are part and parcel of those interventions around the mindset change program that is coming up.
We also have the Youth National Planning Commission, Youth for Advisory Panel, where our colleagues press it. We have the National Planning Commission, Youth Camp, Youth Co-Advisory Panel. Monica is one of those members of the camp. So these ones represent youth of the whole country. We've been involved in the whatever we've been doing, starting from the consultations of the Malawi 63 vision to now. So they're always on our necks. You know, if we're doing something, the youth are not involved, they always kind of us. We hear you're launching something. We hear you're doing something. Where are the youth? So you shouldn't worry much. They come up with ideas on how the youth can be involved in Malawi 2063, in the pillars and the knowledge.
We understand that leadership is about power. Are they ready to actually let go of that power for the young ones to lead? What programs are there for those ones?
Okay, so as you mentioned, the vision has just been launched.
Yeah, I understand it's a process, so I think the answer is no.
So are you still not clear? Because we are also looking at the time.
Yeah, I understand. She has answered. There are no programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Focus on poverty reduction. And this vision is focusing on wealth creation and self-reliance. And it has a number of shortfalls that we are trying to build on and try to ensure that it won't happen again. For example, it also did not do well in terms of monitoring and evaluation of the interventions. So we want to strengthen those areas to ensure that we achieve what we have laid out to achieve.
So somehow, as a ministry, we are also involved. Since we are the policy holders, so we provide policy guidance. So what we are trying to do, what is being done differently is that now they're doing consultation. This is the beginning. This is the first step. So they are doing consultations, and then when the implementation goes full throttle, probably we'll see the change.
But
as you know,
okay,
everything is always beautiful on paper, and then in practice is.
Commence youth in our national program. What would you recommend? A, to Comesa. 2, to the government of Malawi. 3, to ourselves as respective civil society organizations. And 4, to ourselves as individuals. So we want those recommendations, and then I'm compiling them. So just send them to WhatsApp. While we are listening to the presentations, you can be thinking of what to recommend in the end of the step.
Also remember, we have our competition. I'm sure by now Akutale Center has not sent us number where it was supposed to be at 3 o'clock. But I'm not sure Akutale Center has made about it. Just to keep you your mind on very specific competition. Someone's going to walk away with a t-shirt, or 4 of them. Thank you, Mr.
Okay, having at least learned something about the Malawi 2063 and the week 1, coming in a presentation on youth engagement strategy. So this one is a strategy that NPC, working in collaboration with Ministry of Youth and NICOM, coming up with, just to ensure youth are engaged in the process of implementation of the Malawi 2063. So this one basically is mainly focusing on the MIP 1, which means it will be reviewed after the MIP 1 completed. As we develop the MIP 2, some elements will be revised, at least to also accommodate the elements that will come in that MIP 2 and so on and so forth. So it will keep being revised. So it is at the very draft phase, because we are just developing it. Nothing much has come out. So I'll just present to you the few things that came out from the youth that we engaged. The youth came mostly from the urban areas, but they included the youth with disabilities, some youth from we have the youth co-advisory panel for National Planning Commission, and we also have some youth within the organizations that were invited to this session. So we have the young politicians, they were also part of that. So that background, and includes Malawi 2063, as I already said, it's an inclusive, healthy, and self-reliant industrial upper middle income Malawi by the year 2063. It's anchored by the 3 pillars I've already mentioned to them. Those are the pillars and the enablers. And the Malawi will have attained the 10 years of self-governing by the year 2063. That's where we arrived at the year 2063. And the aspiration of economic independence, where we are looking at Malawi has over being donor dependent throughout the years. So we are now trying to divert from being donor dependent to depending on our own capacities for the development of our own nation. That's where the self-reliance is coming in. So that cannot take a year or 2, it can take so many years for us to reach that stage where we are now independent, self-reliant, doing things on our own without relying on the donors to support us for our national development to move forward. So, as a youthful population, as I already said, 51% of the population is the youth that are under 18 years. It necessitates for the youth to be at the center of implementation of this to define their own destiny in the achievement of the Malawi 2063. The economic empowerment of the youth has potential to significantly transform the socio-economic landscape of Malawi. Being energetic individuals in the society, they can put all their efforts to work towards the achievement of the national socio-economic development of the nation. The young people are often faced with challenges and barriers that discriminate them from participating in the economic, political, and social life, hence focusing on them also. There is a need for Malawi to make a commitment to address key challenges and barriers to youth development. This will guarantee provision and accessibility to quality education, skills development, decent work opportunities, among other opportunities that the youth may need. As active contributors to the development, the youth must be engaged in the implementation and realization of Malawi 2063. The success of Malawi 2063 will be compromised unless it is owned by the youth, and its implementation is based on the ideals of youth inclusiveness and shared prosperity. That's where inclusive wealth creation is coming in also. The Malawi 2063 process engaged the youth from the envisioning process through the defining of areas of interventions during the development of the MIP1. So the youth were engaged during the consultations, throughout the consultations, and they were also part and parcel of moving around the country through the youth co-advisor panel, collecting information on what the Malawians and other youth are saying. So youth participated in various forums. On TV, they were contributing ideas. There were essay competitions. There were a lot of things that that provided a forum through which youth participated in the consultations and contributed to the development of this vision. The YES elaborates strategic policy directions and steps to be taken to augment youth participation in development, particularly in the implementation of MIP1 and the respective MIPs to follow. Youth representatives from across the country were engaged to deliberate on approaches to, that's now the development process of the youth engagement strategy. That's how it went. Then the engagement ensured participation of various youth groups, including those with disability, and we are yet to consult the youth in the rural areas. The youth in the rural areas have not yet been consulted. So in a week or two, I think we are moving forward to consult the youth in the rural areas to beef up the information that we got from the other youth. The inclusive and participatory process of the developing the Malawi 2063, and yes, ensures and safeguards the ownership of Malawi 2063 by the youth, ensured that the vision is understood and accepted by the youth, and for them to take an active role in its implementation. The process offered a unique opportunity for the youth to collectively reflect on the challenges that they face and how MW 2063 can harness Malawi's youthful population in realization of its aspirations. It aims to address those challenges by providing solutions as well as learn from the past failures. So, from the contributions that came from the other youth, the final decision on what the vision should be around the youth engagement strategy, the vision was to have a proactive, inclusive, and meaningful youth engagement in planning, implementation, monitoring, and review of MIP1. Overall goal is to provide a vibrant and meaningful participation and involvement of young people in the implementation of Malawi 2063 through MIP1. The approaches of the YES includes youth-driven, participatory institutional presence, use of information sharing platforms, and use of art forms. All these came from the youth that we were consulting. So, after also putting together what the youth contributed in terms of what they expected as the outcomes that came out, the expected outcomes is to enhance knowledge of the youth on MW 2063, Malawi 2063, where the youth wanted their capacity and the capacity of the youth organization to be enhanced so that they be knowledgeable and empowered to demand their engagement in the implementation of Malawi 2063. They also proposed an outcome to do with increased strengthened role of the youth in the implementation of Malawi 2063 and MIP1, where they wanted to see improved implementation capacity and knowledge of the long-term development plans and the role of the youth in the planning and implementation, monitoring and evaluation process around the MIP1. Effective coordination of youth-led interventions, where they wanted to see district and national youth engagement coordination structures capacity developed or enhanced, and these structures should be fully knowledgeable about the Malawi aspirations as contained in the Malawi 2063, and ensure that their actions are well aligned to Malawi 2063. The last but not least expected outcome that came out is improved policy environment for meaningful participation. So those are not exhaustive. From further inputs, those can be refined or we can add in more outcomes. So the alignment of the youth engagement strategy is also to the national and the regional guidelines. So the national policies and guidelines that is aligned to the youth engagement strategy is the Malawi 2063 itself, the MIP1, the national youth policy, and the adolescent girls and young women strategy. It also aligns to the regional guidelines and the policies, which includes sustainable development goals, the African Union Agenda 2063 and the African Youth Charter. The national structures for the youth engagement that will be used when engaging the youth, those are the structures at the community level. Going to the traditional authority level, there are youth networks, youth action committees that are going to be involved. So the youth action committees comprise of those stakeholders and service providers, extension makers, and agencies. And there's a group village headman level where we have youth organizations and youth clubs. At the district level, the structures include the district youth officer, the district youth network, other youth organizations such as Youth Wave, just an example, youth and sports sector working group, the youth technical working groups, adolescent girls and young women core groups, and the adolescent and young women subgroups comprising of CSOs, research institutions, and other non-state actors. Then we have the national level structures, which we have the National Youth Council of Malawi, the Department of Youth itself, through the Ministry of Youth and Sports, the National Youth Network, interministerial committees on adolescents and youth, AGY advisory committees comprising of principal secretaries and directors, AGY core group comprising of the Ministry of Youth and Sports, Economic Planning and Development, Health, those are the ministries, Education, Local Governance and Finance. And we have youth and sports sector working groups, youth technical working groups, and the youth parliament. So implementation arrangements, as I've already said, this is work in progress. The M&D framework, we are actually in the process of finalizing the M&D framework, which we are developing as a team of National Planning Commission, Ministry of Youth, and NICO from the interventions that the youth provided. And we are also developing a communication strategy from all the interventions that came out. So, as I said that the youth contributed, so I'm not sure if we have time for the youth in here also to give out their ideas on what we can include in the youth engagement strategy. Starting with what challenges are you foreseeing that can hinder you from taking part or an active involvement in the implementation of the Malawi 2063 vision. It's our vision for Malawi. So what challenges are we foreseeing as youth? And what do we think are the causes of those challenges? And what can we propose as solutions to these challenges? Because we also need your views to be part and parcel of the youth engagement strategy to help you take part in the implementation of the Malawi 2063.
Academia, so somebody that's my enablers, my pillars, and everything else. What are the changes that you're seeing? If you should be the drivers of it, what are the changes that you're seeing? What can you propose that should be done to make sure that you, as the young people, are fully involved and fully engaged, and you are meaningfully participating in the development of this country? Can we have some answers, please? Because we really need some input from you guys. Thank you.
Of the guidelines or the strategic plan with the instruments which are already existing,
Say, for example, we're talking about the National Youth Policy. Madam, we are aware that the National Youth Policy now is out. That was born in 2013, and today is 2022. It was supposed to be actually succeeded in 2018 should be. We don't know if this one has actually taken note of the emerging issues in the current time, because we have a process which has started over the review of the current national youth policy. So is this one also able to accommodate the emerging issues? I just wanted to have that one, because that might be another clear challenge if you haven't actually incorporated the kind of emerging issues that we have as young people currently in Malawi. Thank you so much.
Issues of active participation of the youth of the National Youth Service, it's coming out in here, it also came out in the National Youth Policy, much as it has not yet been approved, because it's also under development, the youth policy. So I think the ideas that will come from you and those that came from the National Youth Policy, but we cannot take fully whatever is in the National Youth Policy, because the consultation around the youth engagement strategy is on how they can implement Malawi 2063. So we cannot take wholesale the ideas that came in the National Youth Policy. Much as some are related, we are seeing some interventions or strategic interventions that were proposed in the National Youth Policy that is under development, also appearing, reflecting some of the interventions that are being proposed in here. Because some of the activities that the youth were proposing, we are trying to refine them to make them make sense, because some were just mentioning in their groups, so we are trying to frame them to make sense, but most of them are linked, but some, not all of them, because and we cannot automatically say, let's take whatever is in the youth policy and put in the youth engagement strategy, because we want the youth to speak by themselves. What is it that is pinning them, or that is hindering them, or that they foresee as a hindrance to their participation in the implementation of all the interventions around MIP 1.
Thank you, Madam. And that's
The question is, after this draft has been made and it has been implemented, how long is it going to run? Because my thinking is that after you take up our views and what we're thinking, you have to sit down and then draft a proper strategy, and then from there implement that strategy before 2063, right? Yeah, so how long do we have for us to implement this? Because I'm thinking that it has to be quick, so that it should be implemented and the strategy should be put in place, so that we can now focus on the actual agendas that we have in the 2063 plan.
We are running this youth engagement strategy to the big one, which is 10 years period, not to 2063, it's up to 2030. So youth engagement strategy, if let's say it gets approved this year, it means immediately after launching, then we start the implementation. We need to also seek resources around that. We don't have resources yet, but we propose the financing modalities, how can it be financed. So after the resources, which we are sure will be provided by co-quoters that have an interest in this vision, then we are immediately rolling it out alongside the big one, because they need to run together up to 2030.
List. So, but then you deserve a hand, nothing less than that. Let's give it a hand.